Welcome to a new episode of the Horror Ghouls. We are the podcast that gives you spooky movie reviews and keeps you company through this journey called life. We are the Horror Ghouls. I'm Megan.
I'm T.
We are happy to have you here with us once again, or maybe for the first time. Today, we are going to talk about a little movie you may have heard of called Pet Sematary. It came out in 1989, was directed by Mary Lambert. Google tells us in a nutshell, that's a little feature they have if you look up a movie. This movie is harrowing, shocking, and sinister. All of our favorite things, right?
Indeed.
This film is based on the book Pet Sematary by Stephen King, who also wrote the screenplay. Yay.
Nice.
Let's get into it. So, we initially get a lot of remote cemetery imagery through the entire opening credit scene, and they're immediately setting the scene. This is going to be very cemetery heavy. They want us to know what we're in for. So we find ourselves in rural Maine, which, of course, it's Stephen King. Where else would we be? Right?
Right.
The,
Predictable.
yeah, a little bit. The Creed family is moving into their new home. Dr. Lewis Creed, his wife Rachel, and their kids Ellie, Gage, and Kat Church. Creed has accepted a job as a doctor at a local college, and that's why the family has moved from Chicago. While their new home is semi-remote, we see it is a very busy highway for passing trucks, like big ass trucks, not like a little Dodge Ram or any of that
Yeah,
nonsense.
no.
So
Semis.
big ass trucks. Yep. Daughter Ellie has a tire swing incident, so her parents run over to make sure she's okay. While they do that, they leave their younger child. I would say Gage is probably like 2.
He's
Would you
definitely
think?
too.
Okay.
Hmm.
Unattended by himself, he wanders towards the road. Luckily, their neighbor across the street scoops him up before it's too late and delivers him safely back to his parents. This is how we meet Judd Crandall, their older, pleasant neighbor with a very interesting accent who loves overalls. He's always wearing overalls. He is played by Fred Gwynne, who you may also know as Herman Munster. Also the judge in My Cousin Vinny, etc. He was in like Are You There? Car 54. Like that's not the title. I just made it weird. Anyway, he's been in a lot of stuff. We love him. He also reminds me of my grandpa, and that makes me love him all the more. Judd warns them of the dangers of the busy road. It's trucks booking it at top speeds all day, all night. So that's one of the first things he says. Rachel has noticed there's a path next to their house and she wants to know where it goes. Judd's like, well, that's an interesting story. And one day I'll take you down there, give you the deets.
That's a good story. A good walk. I'll take you up there sometime.
The music here and his expression, it's kind of something very old-timey. Like they really focus on his face to indicate
Yeah.
like something bad is down that path, right?
Yeah, do
So
the accent. You were so
I
close.
can't. I'm gonna like butcher it so crazy. It might naturally come out. If it does, I'll let it happen. But if I force it, it's gonna just really sound crazy. So I'm just gonna leave it. So that night, Judd and Creed share a beer. Judd lets Creed know that the path leads to a pet cemetery. There's the title. It's already
Oh,
happening. Um, the reason one was even needed was because of the trucks hauling ass back and forth. So Judd and family take a hike to the pet cemetery, which seems like a weird kind of like a moving in activity, but whatever.
weird family activity.
Yeah, the sign is spelled incorrectly. It's spelled with an S. Like a little kid wrote it on a sign many a year ago. They take a look around at all the little headstones and the cross is stuck in the ground. It's really like a bonding family time with their strange new neighbor. Judd freaks out Ellie by telling her that cemeteries are places where the dead speak. So he's really making a fantastic impression immediately with these little kids because Ellie's probably like 8 or
Yeah, I would say
9,
she's about 8.
something like that, right?
Yeah.
So they make their trip, they come back, everyone's fine. Creed decides to take church to get fixed. Judd previously told him that fixed cats tend not to wander, aka get smushed in the road. So they decide that's for the best. Heads off to his first day of work, and he drops church at the vet on the way. On his very first day, he gets a really gory case. of a kid who was jogging and got hit by a truck. He has a really terrible head injury. And right before he passes away, he scares the crap out of Creed by jumping up and saying some weird shit. He said, "The soil of a man's heart is stonier, Lewis." And Creed is like, "How do you know my name? Like, sorry about your dying, but how do you, like, that's very weird." This jogger, by the way, his name is Victor Pascal. And he says back to Creed, "I'll come to you," and unceremoniously dies. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the end of
After
him.
after spitting a bunch of blood in his face.
That's
So
true. He did. Your favorite thing. That must have been your favorite
right.
moment.
Yeah.
So that night, either by dreaming or not dreaming, we don't know, Creed is led by Pascal's ghost to the pet cemetery. Pascal has a warning for Creed. There's something beyond the pet cemetery, a place where the dead walk. Pascal tells him to never go there. The barrier was never meant to be crossed. In the morning, Reed wakes up back in his bed, but finds that his feet and the bottom of his pants are dirty. So perhaps not a dream. They've moved in, right? Some time has passed, but immediately Rachel is going home to her parents' house for Thanksgiving. Creed stays, since her dad has weird beef with him for reasons we don't know about.
Yeah.
Judd calls him and tells him some bad news. Church has been hit by a truck. That's,
Another one bites the dust.
yeah, it's
Dun,
not.
dun, dun. Another one bites the dust.
Imagine
Yeah.
that's the message. Like he called him and just played. He's like, hold on, listen. And he was like, guess what happened? Just kidding. That'd be terrible.
I
So
can't tell you about your kind. I think you better get over here, Lewis. I think there's something
it's,
wrong with your kind. There's a dead cat on my lawn.
I really want to know the inspiration for that accent. Like I'm dying to know because that was like pretty dead on, honestly. So we need to know. Creed goes over across the street and Judd's talking to him and asking him questions about what are you going to do? How are you going to tell Ellie? But all the while, he's doing almost like that far away look that he was doing initially when he was like, that path leads somewhere, wherever, special. And then he suggests that maybe there's something they can do, but he doesn't really give any more information. Back to the pet cemetery they go, but beyond is the place that they're actually headed. They have to climb over this giant branch barricade, and they actually have to go pretty far in order to reach their destination. They eventually wind up at a Micmac Indian burial ground where Judd tells him to bury Ellie's cat. And he says, I would help you, but you have to do it yourself because each buries his own. Again, he's not giving any details about what is happening. He's just like, just do what I say. This is definitely an interesting looking burial ground. It's a lot of rock piles and circles. So not like your standard like headstone and everyone's in the ground and stuff. It does seem a bit stony there, seems hard to dig, but he gets the job done and returns home. Creed again doesn't really get what's happening. He just kind of blindly follows Judd, and Judd just tells him not to tell anyone what they did. And then he tells Creed the soil of a man's heart is stonier, but in again his fun accent, so it's like Stonia, something like that. Now, this of course freaks out Creed because that's exactly what Pascal had said to him. So he's like, something weird is happening. The next day, Creed goes into the garage and finds Church. He's looking a little mangy and he's looking a little pissed. And he startles the crap out of Creed, but he goes inside and gets him some food. Church does approach and eat, so all seems fine. Except for that, when Creed picks up Church, he notices he smells pretty bad. And before he puts him back down, Church takes a nice swipe at his face and scratches him up. Uh, nice. Judd and Creed are having a little drink together, and Judd reveals that when he was young, he also buried his pet dog in the cemetery beyond, and he came back, but he came back different, just like Church. He suggests that Ellie wasn't ready to lose Church, and that's why he even had this idea. Creed asks him if anybody ever buried a person up there. Judd seems absolutely horrified. He's like, no. Like, oh my gosh, that would be crazy. When Rachel and the kids return from their trip, Ellie asks if Church is okay because she had a dream that he got hit by a car and Creed and Judd buried him in the pet cemetery. That's very specific. And Creed's like, that's crazy. He is fine. What are you talking about?
Ellie's
When
a little prophet.
she is, she really is. And that's so exactly specific. How do you not freak out as a parent? But Creed's just like, no, what do you mean? That's crazy. But When she sees Church, she immediately notices that he smells bad. And he also regularly has glowing eyes. Like if you've ever seen a cat in the dark and you see their eyes kind of like that,
Mhm.
he's like that all the time now. So just like, just regular stuff. Um, there's some like side plots that don't really matter for story today, so I left them out. But the one thing I want to mention at this point in the movie, Stephen King does make an appearance as a priest or a pastor or something of that nature, which is like a tradition because he does love to make appearances in movie adaptations of his work. We're always happy to see him. So,
He's the original M. Night Shyamalan.
yes, yes, he is. So it's not super relevant to their story, but we need to talk about Rachel's sister, Zelda. Rachel is really messed up about her sister, Zelda, that I just mentioned. Her sister apparently had spinal meningitis, and according to Rachel, was kept in their back room like a dirty secret. Zelda looks super creepy. If you are a person that watched this as a youth, her image is probably scarred into your brain forever. Rachel goes on to say that her family, they actually wished for her to die, not just because she was in pain, but she's looking hella creepy and freaking them out.
Yeah.
She was like, she was putting us through pain, so we wanted her. She's saying this when she confesses it, she feels guilt and she's upset, but it's like shitty still.
But
But
you can kind of understand that. I mean, because anybody
yes,
who's, and this is going to sound odd, but I've been in a situation, anyone who's taking care of somebody, as they're declining or something like that, you just want some respite every once in a while.
sure.
And I can understand this situation. Well, first of all, the parents were already wrong because they were keeping her in the room like a dirty little secret, like
Yeah.
literally, quote unquote. I think that that's almost, as the people say, saying the quiet part out loud, because they're
Yes.
like, because it's like, a lot of times when you do have that and you're taking care of somebody, and sometimes you're like, oh my God, when is this going to end? But not in
Right.
a negative way. It's just like you're exhausted, that person's exhausted. And you're kind
Yeah.
of waiting to see what's going to happen. This is an extreme version of that, though.
It
Very
is
extreme.
it is an extreme version, but as like a qualifier almost, Rachel was only 8 years old when this happened. So it's complicated. And part of this like trauma she has surrounding Zelda is that they would occasionally leave Rachel alone with Zelda. She's only 8 years old and she's like, if she dies, are they holding me responsible for this? Like whatever. But
And she was
again,
creepy and she was out of her mind. She was
she's
like
so
insane.
creepy. So many people I've spoken to about this movie, like this is like a formative memory from their childhood because they remember Zelda like creeping around and being like, Rachel, I'm gonna get you. Like it's really creepy. So, like I said, not super essential to our plot, but I would be remiss if we did not acknowledge her because I know she lives in so many of our brains against our will, rent free. So,
She's in your dreams at night.
ugh, and hopefully that's all.
Yeah.
Um, so fast forward a bit to the family having a picnic. I guess it's their property. Like they do have a substantial chunk of property.
Yeah, it was definitely their property, it looked like.
Yeah, just like away from the house. Judd is there because they're all besties now and they have snacks and a kite. Gage is learning to fly the kite with his dad. And Creed lets Gage run around with the kite. And at one point, the wind takes it, it gets away from him. So he's chasing the string. Because everyone's having a good time, they're semi-distracted. And all of a sudden, everyone becomes very aware that Gage is getting close to the road. They yell to Creed to get him, and despite his best efforts, he falls before reaching him, and Gage meets his end
Do, do,
by
do.
Mack truck.
Another
Yeah.
one bites the dust. Do, do,
Yes.
do.
Another one. Best us.
It
Hey.
what's crazy is that Judd does see the baby first. He sees Judd. He sees Gage going out
Yeah.
first, and he starts screaming, "Get the baby!" And then I got weirded out by the mom because she just kept screaming, "Get the baby! Get the baby!" And it's like you're not running either, lady. Like you're just
Right.
standing there. I would be like, "Oh, I'm about to check star myself over there and try to get my son." Now, I will say Lewis or Creed has been he ran really fast,
Oh, yeah.
and the fact that he tripped at the end is
Uh,
ridiculous.
yeah. He
It's
really did.
ridiculous.
He really gave it his best effort. It's just he tripped.
Listen,
But like you said, the mom didn't run. She could have helped out, but whatever. So at Gage's funeral, Rachel's dad is there and kicks Creed's ass because he's an asshole. Like we don't even like know. He's just like, I knew this was gonna happen. He just doesn't like him.
And
But is
that
that the
was
place to work that out?
it's not. And that was so inappropriate. Like the fact he walks up on him while he's at the casket. He's like, "This was your fault. What were you doing? You weren't watching your kid." And it's like, "Sir, I
Yeah.
am grieving my kid right now." And
Yeah.
yes, I realized I tripped at the 50-yard line. Like I tripped at not even 50-yard line. I tripped at the goalpost,
Right,
okay?
right,
I
right.
understand I did not get the touchdown, okay? The other team came, which was the truck, and it took the ball away, which was the
Yeah.
kid. So,
But also it's like it's crazy because they're scuffling and they knock Gage's casket over.
yeah,
Horrifying. You don't see him, thankfully, but you do catch like a glimpse of his little hand as the kind of like the lid kind of opens as it hits the ground. So
which
that's
is
creepy.
which, if you know, I said before, I said I would laugh. I said if that I ever saw that in real life, like somebody falling out of a casket, I would laugh. So, like, I was sitting there with bated breath, like, is he about to fall all the way out? Because if he just
Yeah,
would have
she
fell
gonna
out and
roll
rolled like,
out.
if he rolled out like Mary Shelley or Mary Shaw, I mean,
I was like, Mary Shelley, what'd she
not
roll
her.
out with it? Yeah.
No, if he came out like Mary Shaw,
Or like
laying
laying
on
on
the
the ground
ground,
like that lady from Five Nights at Freddy's, the aunt or
yes,
whatever, with her shoe
yes,
off.
or
Shoe.
any other family member you might have in your life.
I don't know what you mean. Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
I would have laughed. But anyway, I
yeah.
digress. Let's go on with the story.
So that night, Judd tells Creed, he's like, I know what you're thinking. You're gonna go bury Gage in the Micmac Cemetery, and you should absolutely not do that. He then goes on to confess that he had lied to him previously about a person not having been buried up there. Timmy Baterman had been on his way home from serving in World War II and was killed. His father, Bill, buried him up in the cemetery and he came back. This is also where Judd delivers the famous line from this movie.
Sometimes that is better.
We get a visual of what Timmy was like when he returned. He was feral, essentially, chewing on a limb of some kind. I couldn't tell if it was human or animal. Don't know. And then he also just like peeled off a part of his face. Like he just like
Yeah.
that was gross. He was definitely giving zombie vibes, I would say. He started really freaking out the townspeople because he was staggering around like Frankenstein almost with his weird open face wound or whatever.
Yeah.
So they decided something had to be done. A bunch of men from town went and set the Baderman house on fire. While they were doing this and they showed it, Billy is, or Bill, the dad, is literally inside trying to fight Timmy off because I guess he then turned on his dad. He actually got himself lit on fire in the process of that, and both of them perished, unfortunately. Judd goes on to say that even the local, like, Micmac population stopped using that place because they were like, this is poison
The
ground or
soil is
powers or
soured.
yeah, they were like, no, we're all set. So Judd also confesses he believes he might be responsible for Gage's death because he introduced Creed to the powers that enabled the dead to come back to life. So he feels very guilty that he might have had something to do with this.
Which he had nothing to do with that. Like that part in itself did not make any sense to me because I could understand him feeling guilty in general because
Yeah.
maybe he's like, I wasn't watching or I distracted you or something like that. But to say, because I introduced you to this, I'm the reason why Gage is gone. No, you're not. No,
Well,
you're not.
I think he also probably feels because he kind of misses, well, no, I think I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but it's like he misses his next opportunity to prevent him. So I think he just feels guilty for even letting him know about it at all, because he couldn't
That could
have
be true.
foreseen the tragedy that would
Right.
befall them. He just is like, that was a bad, but it was also the first thing that came to mind, even when something happened to the cat, and he was like, I know something about that road. Let's go, let's go put him back up there. And it's like,
Now,
should
you know
you?
what?
Mm,
I'm asking you a question now
mm,
about this because there is kind of some discourse online and I'm interested to know what you think.
okay.
So, people are saying that Judd, I never say right, Judd,
Judd,
right?
it's okay. It's
Right.
okay. Judd.
So, people are debating whether or not Judd was good for what he did, or was he bad? Or was he someone with good intentions who did something bad? Or did he always know that this would be the end result and was kind of like an agent of chaos? So, do you think with him introducing in the very beginning, even introducing, the prospect of burying Church to have Church come back as a zombie cat, Do you think that that's malicious, or what do you think about his decision to even tell him about that?
I feel that Judd is just a complicated person who like so he mentioned his dog came back and his dog was not okay and he had to put his dog down. So he kind of already knew the end result. He knew the end result of Timmy Baterman was not successful. But it's like I do feel that he genuinely was trying to be helpful and spare a little girl a heartbreak when she's so young. I don't think it was malicious intent. I genuinely think he was trying to be helpful, but just that he is a flawed person that was like, well, maybe it will work this time. Like I don't think that he's purposefully doing anything to be harmful to anyone. Like that's kind of my take on it because I don't know. Also, it kind of goes to like the next part of like we'll get into that in a second, but just like how he tries to prevent any more of it happening. Like he doesn't because if he was just like an agent of chaos, he'd be like, "Yes, perfect." Like Dr. Claw from
Right.
Inspector Gadget. Um like so I think it was a mistake that he made that he deeply regretted. And also because I love Fred Gwynn, I think I'm just like gonna defend him no matter what happens.
Right. Well, I
So
mean, the internet felt mostly the same as you did.
yeah,
Like he was just a person with good intentions that gave bad advice. I
yeah,
I'm not quite there. I feel like he was a well-meaning person who knew what was going to happen because he had experienced it on two different levels
yeah,
personally and still decided to go through with it, which to me makes it more malicious than good. Like, yes,
yeah,
you want to spare the little girl the heartache of losing her cat, but I mean, at the same time, he also back in the cemetery said children need to know about this. Because the whole thing was they were in the
you're true,
cemetery
you're
talking
right.
about dead people or dead animals. He said children need to know about this. So why couldn't she just have gone through it? Yes, she would have been hurt. Yes, she would have been upset. But at the end of the day, I think that wouldn't have caused all the rest of the stuff that happened in this movie to
Yeah,
happen.
no, I think you're right. And it's weird too, like I said, that that's his first thought.
Right.
Right? Like about like taking him there. But I still think that he's kind of just like a lonely old man and but like why especially it's your neighbor across the street, why would you want to invite that? Because then you have to like help them deal with it or you have to deal with it yourself because a cat's trying to eat your face when you're sleeping. Like they're too close neighbors, you
Right.
know? So it's like I think he just made a terrible mistake. Like I honestly, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Like I understand why, because like logically it could be what you said.
Yeah, and like I said, the internet is kind of divided on it too. With like I said, the majority of people feeling like he was a well-intending person
Yeah.
that just made a grave mistake. And I'm like, yep, he
A
made that
grave
he
mistake? Hmm.
ooh. But he made a mistake and I'm just thinking like, yeah, he was a person who knew the consequences and still went through with it. So that makes him an asshole.
I
Uh
feel like I can relate to that because I do things like that all the time, as you know, that I'm like, this is not going to work out well, and I sh definitely shouldn't do it. And then I do it anyway. So like,
so yeah, just curious.
He's just flawed. No, but it makes sense. Like what, like I said, whatever, everything you're saying makes sense. And it's hard to say. I wish we could ask him, sir, what
Why'd
were
you do that?
what were you thinking?
Mm,
Why'd you do that?
right.
So Rachel and the kids go back with Rachel's parents to their home in Chicago. Before they go, Ellie says she has a dream about someone named Pascal, but nobody seems to take notice. So Creed stays in Maine to allegedly tie up some loose ends, but we see him immediately head to the graveyard with a shovel. While he's there, Pascal appears and is reminding him the barrier was not meant to be crossed. Creed disregards this. It's unclear sometimes if he can actually hear Pascal because he doesn't really interact with him. So it's like, do you know there's a presence? Do you not know? Not sure. But Creed is disregarding him and he does say out loud because he's like unraveling. He's like, well, if he comes back wrong, I could just I could just put him back to sleep. It's totally fine. Like he's just starting to be a little spaced out. That night in Chicago, Ellie has another bad dream about Pascal. Pascal is warning Ellie that her dad is up to no good. Ellie wakes up and tells her mom, and she's like, I keep dreaming about this ghost. It's, she says his name differently. I don't remember how she says it. She doesn't say Pascal. She said something else, but it's very close.
Yeah.
Um, And she's like, he's a ghost. And her mom's like, there's no such thing. Ellie's like, no, he's a good ghost. Like, he's not bad, whatever. And she keeps saying his name. And at first, Rachel's like, what? And then she's like, wait, like Pascal? And then she's like, oh, shit. And she runs to the phone because the name is familiar to her because of the accident, right?
Well, he was there telling her too. So,
Yeah, he's like whispering in her ear, kind of.
yeah,
Um, And she calls home. Unfortunately, Rachel cannot get through to Creed because he's still in the cemetery digging. She calls Judd as well, but obviously Creed is not there. And Rachel just says she's going to come home. Judd tries to dissuade her, but she's hung up already, so it's too late.
which again, he knew what was going on. He knew what Lewis Creed was up to.
Yeah,
And that's why he was like, "Don't come back, Rachel. No, don't do that," because he knew what was going on. And that
absolutely.
and that to me is just like once again. And yes, at this point he is getting ready to make a change, but too little, too late, sir.
Yeah. No, he knows that there's something terrible happening.
Hmm.
Because also, he was like watching, he's like sitting on his porch because he wanted to catch Creed going, but he nodded off. So he missed his chance completely to kind of stop what was going to happen. But, whatever. So Rachel, while she's still at her parents' house, she has this like an episode almost. Or she visits rather, her sister Zelda's bedroom because Rachel is haunted by Zelda. Um, and she's envisioning kind of Zelda going after her and saying she's going to get her again. And not just Zelda, but also Gage now at this point. Rachel suddenly gasps, and we see she's actually on a plane, and she had dreamed the prior sequence of events, dreams, possibly. Pascal's ghost is visible on the plane a few rows back, so he's like accompanying her on her journey. He assists her along the way. He makes sure she's catching her connecting flight. He's making sure she gets a rental car. Her car does blow out on the way, and he tries to warn her that the powers are trying to stop her. And she does almost feel his presence. She pauses. She's like, is somebody there? Because she knows she feels something. So back at the ranch, this is kind of just what I was speaking to. Judd is falling asleep on his porch and misses seeing Creed walking with Gage down the path. Creed, like I said, he's unraveled, and there's definitely some paranormal energy at play that seems to try to make him turn back, but he doesn't. Like there's sounds and weird things in the woods and lights and this, and he's just like, everything's fine. So we see back at the burial grounds that the rocks that he had covered Gage with begin to move and his little hand can be seen. Meanwhile, while that's happening, Rachel hitchhikes the rest of the way home in one of those big ass trucks. I have great news. Great news, everyone. Gage has returned home and let himself into the house. Great news. Hooray.
Yay!
He makes a beeline or like a semi-slow zombie walk to his dad's medical bag and grabs a scalpel.
Which how did he know that was even there? But
Driven by darkness, I don't know. So
yes.
back across the street, Judd awakens and sees the Creed house has lights on, and he was like, "Oh God!" So he gets up and he sees little baby toddler footprints that lead into his house, and he hears a laugh. Gage calls out to him to play hide and seek, and we hear things fall and thump around the house. Judd knows to expect something bad, and he pulls out a pocket knife. Church jumps out because now there's a cat in his house too. Surprise. Scares the crap out of Judd and gives Gage the opportunity to kind of scoot out from under the bed and cut into his ankle. And it's gross too. It's like a deep cut. And then Gage grossly unalives Judd by slicing and biting into him. And that is the end of our friend Judd. But we will miss him and his weird accent that we love
Oh, I'm
so
sorry.
much.
Dun, dun, dun. Another one bites the dust.
I
So
wish we should have like a counter. Like what are we up to? So
three.
okay. She was on top of it. She's like, it's three, I already know. So Rachel arrives home. She gets out of the car, but as she does, she actually hears Zelda call out to her. She looks across the street, and as she does, she hears Gage giggle. She also sees Church licking blood off his paws. So everything is wrong. Everything's going poorly. She goes into Judd's house and cautiously climbs the stairs. She hears Zelda again and follows the sound. She opens the door. and Zelda advances on her, telling her she's going to twist her back so she'll never get out of bed again.
Never get out of bed again. Never get out of bed again.
Very creepy. Much creepier if you know what she looks like. I'm assuming you're going to put a picture in that's going to show how
I will
creepy she
do my
looks.
best. Yes.
She's going to try her best. So if you haven't seen it, you'll be able to look at it. And you're welcome for putting that in your head if you don't know what it looks like. So she opens the door that the sound is coming from, and Zelda advances on her, as I just mentioned. And suddenly she kind of snaps out of it. And there's Gage standing in front of her, dressed as a Victorian child for some reason. Like he's wearing,
Which it's weird.
it's weird. Do you know what I realized? But it's not, I don't understand why they necessarily put this in. There was a painting,
I saw that.
yes, but not in that house. Wasn't it at
It's
her
in the
parents'
parents'
house?
house. Yes.
Yes, of like it looked like a little girl wearing like a blue dress with like a black, almost like a top hat, right? But
Yeah.
this isn't relevant to the story in
And
any way.
it had a cat that looked like Church sitting right next to it too.
Yes. So it's almost like an Easter egg, but it's not, like I said, it doesn't do anything for the story. It's not explained. There's no reason.
Well, it's an
But
Easter egg for the Omen.
oh,
So
okay.
it's
Interesting.
a they dressed him up like that. Now I don't know about the picture, but the picture doesn't match what Gage is wearing later on. But they wanted
True.
Gage to match the similar vibes of the Omen,
Mm,
but it's a very loose Easter egg. It's not like something like they were like, yeah, we're definitely going for it. But they said we can give the same vibes of the Omen. So that's how that happened. Because
interesting.
it was an odd choice. Because I'm like, I know they didn't bury that boy in that.
It's all, no, they definitely didn't. But also it's weird because they don't really make a big point of the picture. They don't
No.
like zoom in on it at any point. They don't like take a moment to highlight it. So if you don't catch the painting, you're like, why is this child dressed like a Victorian baby all of a sudden with a top hat? It's very weird. Anyway, I digress about the Victorian child ensemble. So she goes to hug Gage, but he slices her because he's still got that scalpel. And all that we hear is screaming as the scene does a flashback to when he was hit by the truck. And then we go to the next morning. Okay. So the next morning, Creed jolts awake and he falls out of bed and finds muddy little footprints all over his room. He hears Gage laugh and goes out to look for him. The phone rings. It's Rachel's dad. He's checking to make sure Rachel got back okay. Creed says yes, even though this is the first he's hearing of this and he has not seen Rachel, which I feel like is weird, but I think he knows that he's kind of done some crazy things. So he's just like, yes, everything's fine. Creed hangs up, seeing another muddy footprint trail in the kitchen. He's about to investigate when the phone rings again, and he's like about to yell at Rachel's dad, but it's Gage. He says he's at Judd's house and to come play with him. Gage confesses he played with Judd, and then Mommy came and he played with her too. Creed knows that obviously means something terrible has happened and goes across the street. Tempting Church away from guarding the door with a stake, he administers a drug to put Church to sleep, finally realizing what must be done. The inside of Judd's house is now like a crazy, weird, moldy, melty place with green stuff coming out of the walls. He calls out for Rachel and finds one of her shoes, but suddenly the house isn't creepy and moldy anymore. It's just like regular old creepy house, like how it looked when Judd lived there, which is
Yes.
lovely that I love. Creed has come with another hypodermic full of something, not sure, whatever puts people to sleep or animals, um, for Gage, and he commences in trying to locate him. He finds Judd's body first. Then Rachel descends from the ceiling. Gage has noosed her and dropped her from the attic, which is not what you want to find. But then Gage flies down and attacks Creed, giving Chucky vibes. It's like
Yeah.
full out Chucky vibes, the way that he launches himself at him.
100%.
Yeah. Because he's like doing like the outstretched hands, like for his neck almost. Creed manages to finally fight him off, but then he reaches out to hug him and he gets him with the needle. Gage initially cries, but then he toddles away, saying, no fair, no fair, because he is a little demon at this point.
No fair. No fair. No fair.
Gage goes to sleep, hopefully forever this time, and Creed dumps gas all over the inside of the house. He lights it on fire, and we see him carrying Rachel's body away from the house as it becomes completely engulfed. Pascal is there. I think Creed can see him. at this point. I'm not sure, but I think he can. Pascal warns him not to make it worse. He's like, do not make this worse. And Creed, oh man, Creed, he and still kind of his like vacant, like lost his marblesness. He's like, well, I waited too long with Gage, but with Rachel, it will work because she only just died. And Pascal's like, no, no, please don't, please don't do that. Creed commences his trek to the burial ground. Creed gets home. He sits on the kitchen floor, pulls out a deck of cards. He's gonna relax. The door opens. We see a corpsey hand reach around, let herself in. Rachel has returned home. She's really juicing wildly out of her like eye and the whole
Like
gaping head
pus
wound.
and all types
It's
of nastiness.
really gross.
It's giving more dead than any other person in this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And when I say it's really gross, I'm saying that as a compliment and like a wow. Like it's that's disgusting. Thank you for doing that for us. Um, so Creed sees her and he's like, "Oh my gosh." And he plants a big kiss on her, even though there's like pus running down probably right into or next to his mouth. And as that's happening, because she's like happy to see him too, she's like, "Yes, honey, sure." She's grabbing a big knife off the table, and the screen goes to black as we hear a scream. We promptly move into the end credits with the Ramones playing Pet Sematary, and that plays us out. And that is the movie Pet Sematary. Everyone, the end.
Ta-da.
I don't want to be buried. Sorry. Okay. It's a very catchy song by the Ramones,
It
honestly. It
is.
really is. But that's our movie. What do you want to do first? Do you want to tell me how you think about it, or do you want to do some fun facts?
Let's talk about how we feel about it
Let's talk
first.
about how we feel. Okay.
So I never saw this movie before, but I've seen the remake. I did know the basic story. There are some things that are different, but watching this, I definitely appreciate the practical effects. I appreciate the acting in it and the storyline that is presented here because it is, like I said, it's pretty close but slightly different. I felt like, the guy who plays Gage, he did a really good job as a little kid, because he did most of the stuff himself. And I think that, of course, we love Judd. Judd is
Yeah.
great. He's a great guy. I love how I love his part. And so, I mean, I think that this was a good story. I really don't. It's almost reminiscent of when I watched what was that movie that we watched? Poltergeist. And I really didn't have anything to like say about it. I just was like, oh, it was good.
Yeah.
But I really, really did like Poltergeist. I can't say that this was the same level as Poltergeist, but
Poltergeist.
I thought it was a good movie. So yeah, I can't really say much else about it. It was atmospheric. It was creepy. It had some tense moments, and it was your quintessential '80s horror movie. So yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay.
What about you?
I really do feel like this is very solid. I had just mentioned before that having watched so many, this was one of the movies I watched very young, like too young to watch this movie. And going back, having seen so many other horror movies, makes me really appreciate how solid it is, how solid the effects are, and like the acting. And it's always great to see Fred Gwynn, like always, always. So I do even have more of an appreciation for it now, even for the 80s. I think what I say, 1989. It was really good. Like you do find a lot of
Yeah,
cheesy practical effects in the 80s, right? So this was actually really gross ones, which I appreciate. And I generally tend to love Stephen King books and the movies that are made from him, even though like I know personally he hated the Stanley Kubrick Shining. I love that too. Sorry.
I
Sorry,
think it
Stephen
was a good. I
King.
think it was good. I mean,
It just wasn't, he wanted this to be closer to the book, so he was disappointed, but I
oh,
think it really was something special. Yeah, I don't know. I do think this movie is solid. I do think it holds up over time. Have not seen the reboot. I'm interested though because there are some differences to see how it's different. And I know you did mention to me that John Lithgow plays Judd, and he is a
yes.
fantastic actor in general. And even though no one could ever replace Fred Gwynn, he's iconic in his own right. So I'm interested to kind of see what he did with it. But yeah, I think this one's solid.
Well, I will get into our fun facts. I have quite a few today.
Oh,
Um, so the production budget for this movie was 11.5 million, and domestically worldwide they grossed 57.5 million, which they made a great amount of money, but most of this revenue was produced by US and Canadian viewers. So it wasn't a lot worldwide, but the US and Canada really pulled through for this movie.
yeah.
Critically, Rotten Tomatoes gave this a 58% positive. Metacritic gave it 38 out of 100. And a lot of reviews were kind of mixed to negative. Variety called this movie undead schlock, while the New York Times admitted it was good with effectively ghoulish moments. Now, audiences, Cinema Score, they gave it a B, saying it was a solid downbeat horror film. Rotten Tomatoes audience score gave it a 59 because they were kind of split. And
Mm.
Metacritic user ratings gave it 5.1 out of 10 from over 100 voters with mixed or average results. Even though because of all of this, Pet Sematary still carved out a solid place as a cult favorite among horror fans. Miko Hughes, who plays Gage, his ankle slashing scene pops up again and again on lists of the scariest moments from the 80s,
Boo.
proving just how chilling that scene still is. And the film's dark, unsettling ending gets credit for staying true to Stephen King's bleak, fatalistic vision. When the movie hits its 30th anniversary in 2019, when it did hit it, there were question and answers on the con circuit, and retrospectives sparked a wave of nostalgia that helped critics warm up a bit to this movie. So they had a better understanding and a better respect for it. But it wasn't enough to really make people change their mixed reviews on this movie.
Sure.
So going on to some other facts, Miko Hughes, like I said, played Gage. He was only 2 years old during the filming, and his natural innocence added a chilling realism to the role, especially with the intense ankle slash scene. And director Mary Lambert originally hoped to cast twins for this role, which apparently was a standard practice with babies and toddlers. And, just so
Hmm.
you know, Ellie was also a twin. There were two people playing Ellie as well, which for those of you who don't know, the person who played Ellie, one of them, Blaze, she was actually Lenny from Ghost Rider, which I thought was cool. So for those of you who know Ghost Rider, I'm telling my age with that, but that's
Yeah.
that. But after Mary Lambert had, looked at a lot of different twins for the role, she pushed the studio to hire 2-year-old Hughes because he could follow direction better than any of the 4-year-olds, because they wanted to cast a 4-year-old actor or a 4-year-old set of twins instead of 2-year-old, and he was better than those. And of course, his family were on set. They were involved to keep him comfortable and safe given his young age and the dark subject matter. Now, a lot of people were wondering, like, oh my God, was this like hard on him? Because you hear about like The Exorcist and Linda Blair and how
Yeah,
that
yeah.
traumatized her. Well, Hughes himself said he had no idea it was scary, and everyone was clapping for him after his scenes. So he thought that the movie was a comedy. And so he had a great time, doing his little scenes. And at the end, everybody's go, good job. And he was like, yay.
I
So,
did so good. Yeah.
right.
That's so
And
funny.
so he didn't even watch the finished movie until he was 15 years old. And he says that ankle scene, which is infamous at this point, grossed him out worse than his parents. And he said the role was never traumatizing for him and it gave him street cred. So a lot of people were like, hey, you were in one of the best Stephen King movies of all time. You got some cred on you, boy.
Yeah.
And so also Stephen King was present for most of the shoot. And of course, he made a cameo as the minister in the funeral scene. And he was very involved and supportive throughout the entire process, offering input to help keep the film true to his vision. And he said that Pet Sematary is the only novel that he's written that has actually scared him. Out of
Really?
out of all of the novels he's met, yes, that's the
That's
only one.
interesting.
Yeah. And so this movie and the book was inspired by a real pet cemetery near his home in Maine. And there were practical effects, including makeup and prosthetics, to extensively create the eerie resurrection effects and the look of undead characters. So there was no CGI, of course. I feel like this is pre-CGI anyway, really. Like pre-good CGI, because obviously you
Oh,
have
yeah.
like Ghostbusters where you had CGI in it clearly, but that was because that was 80s too.
It
So
was 80s, and as much as I love Slimer,
he looked a little wonky.
he looked a little like, yeah.
Yeah. So
So.
He was
Yeah.
interesting. But the cat Church, or Winston Churchill was his full name, was played by multiple cats trained specifically for the role, some of which were a bit temperamental, so they weren't really happy about being trained for this, but that made the scenes tricky. But they were good because they had, some of them were trained to like lay down, some of them were trained to hiss, some of them were trained to run away, so they had
Right.
a few different cats, all the same breed, of course. So that was kind of cool.
That is cool. I've heard though, like I've watched a lot of actor interviews where they say the hardest and like the worst thing to do is like be acting with animals or children. So to be acting with both of
Both.
them is probably like a
Yeah.
nightmare for the adults who have like done this before that they're like, oh, great, right?
Yeah, I can
But
imagine.
yeah. Mhm.
So, in the film, it had a very haunting score by composer Elliot Goldenthal, and it adds a subtle, unsettling layer that's been praised for enhancing the mood without overpowering the scenes. Yeah, I think that's really all I want to say about that. And I do have some comparisons about the remake because,
Okay.
of course, this movie was made again in 2019, 30th anniversary, apparently. So,
Wow.
um, but the 1989 Pet Sematary relies on more slow building dread, practical effects, and a raw emotional core that resonates thanks to Miko Hughes' chilling performance as Gage. And it's a very bleak, hopeless ending to this story. And it stays true to Stephen King's darker themes, and it gives a very lasting impact.
Right.
Despite the fact that it might have some dated pacing because people were saying that it was a very slow moving movie that had a lot of parts they didn't care about. Now, of course, when we move into 2019, this movie traded the atmosphere for slick visuals. So there were
Mm.
jump scares, there's modern CGI appealing to today's modern horror audience. It updates the story with some different twists, but it does soften the ending, losing some of the original movie's emotional weight and grim tone. And while it is cleaner and fast paced, it doesn't quite capture the haunting subtlety that made the original cult classic. So you can't really get too much from that. Now, audiences did have mixed reviews about the remake.
Hmm.
Many did appreciate the remake's sharper visuals and modern effects and faster pacing because it made the movie more accessible to a newer generation. Which, like I said, I saw that version of this movie first,
Sure.
and I thought it was okay for what it was. I don't have any complaints, but longtime fans of the original felt that the remake lacked any emotional depth, and it didn't have that same slow building dread that made the 1989 version so memorable.
Hmm.
And the softened ending was a sticking point for purists who preferred the original bleak tone. So overall, audiences who saw Pet Sematary, the newer one, like fresh people,
Right.
younger viewers, they prefer the remake, while people who are horror aficionados and Stephen King fans favor the original's mood and faithful storytelling.
Makes sense.
That is that for the fun facts and the comparison of the two
Mm.
movies. And I'm sure at some point we might go into a little bit deeper dive into the remake.
Yeah.
So
I do want to watch it so we can talk about it because I'm very curious to see the difference. But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and I think honestly, if you watch it, I don't think you're going to feel the same way about that one as you feel about this one,
I don't
for
think so
sure.
either. I don't think that I could. I don't think it's
No.
possible.
I think that you will probably most likely prefer this one. I can say probably 100%.
Hmm.
Um, but it's not a horrible movie. So,
Place your bets, everyone.
right.
You can bet at sportsbook.horrorghouls. I don't know. I'm just making things up.
Place your bets, everyone.
Sometimes dead is better. I can't do it. Yeah, very interesting stuff. So would you say, I think you already said it, but just to be really clear, which one did you like better?
You know what? Because they're so different. Like it's the same story, but they're
They're
totally
so
different
different. Yeah,
movies.
yeah, yeah.
I have to say, I honestly think I like this one a bit more. And that's weird for me because I
Was
am
it the
a
accent?
listen, it had to be the
The
Herman
overalls
Munster
and the
and the
accent? Yeah.
overalls and just remembering, oh my God, I love him. No, but but I feel like personally the story was told better in this, though it is a slower burn. But
Right.
I feel like the new one, it kind of it kind of rushes things. You don't get that emotional depth. You don't get that tension. And I didn't like the ending, to be quite honest.
Okay.
And that was me watching it prior. I didn't like the ending when I saw it. I thought the ending was dumb. And so
Gotcha, gotcha.
seeing this one, I much prefer the ending to this movie as opposed to the other one. And so
Hmm.
yeah, I can honestly say I like this movie better.
Okay, interesting. I like it. Well, with that being said, I think it's time to rate it. Some bloody axes. What are you gonna give it?
Yes. How many
What's your
bloody
rating?
axes?
How
So
many?
per usual, quick and dirty, I think I'm going to give this a 7. It's a solid movie. I don't have any issues with it. I can't complain about anything. I'm not even really going to talk about how it was shot. It was a movie. It wasn't anything special about the cinematography to me, but it was
Right.
a really well done movie. The acting was really well done. I'm very impressed with Miko's performance as Gage, because to be two and to be able to, for the most part, do all of these moves. And I didn't put it in my fun facts. I'm sorry, I meant to say it. You know, he he wasn't he did parts of the movie like he held the scalpel, which was not real. And he did walk like a little zombie and everything like that. And he said all of his lines like, I want to play with you, daddy, and I played with mommy, and I played with like he said all of these lines. So he was
Right.
very teachable, but he was not actually the person who cut the back of the neck. Like he didn't actually do that scene. And
Yeah.
there's like a scene where he's getting ready to bite Judd, and they show him, but they actually do like a quick cut and go to like a puppet that actually does the work in the end. So, I think that they did really good with, making those transitions seamless and
Yeah.
also protecting young Miko from some probably more traumatizing things. So,
It was a
um,
concern of mine, and it hasn't been a concern of mine until I watched it this time. I
mm,
never thought about it before. And then watching this little tiny baby do these things, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it okay?
yeah,
Is that okay? So to know those things were in place does make it better. It
yeah,
makes it better
yeah.
to know.
And it's impressive that they went through those lengths to get that stuff done and to make it so seamless, because we've seen some movies where they transition to a puppet and it looks like a puppet.
Oh
Like
yeah.
it looks horrible. It's like it's a
Hmm.
real person and all of a sudden it's like this wax figure with like stiff hands, like
Yeah.
looks like a blow up doll that's used
Yeah.
for fun
That's
times
no.
at night. So,
A little
you know.
specific, but okay. We'll take it.
But yeah, so I mean, I honestly I can appreciate the acting in it. I appreciate that they stayed true to Stephen King's ideas and his thoughts for this movie, and he was so
Yeah,
involved. So I like that.
I
So
do
yeah,
like
I give it
that.
a solid 7. So what about you?
Gosh, this is hard. I think I'm giving it an 8.5. I think I'm giving it 8.5 because I do think it's very solid for all of the reasons you just mentioned, that everyone's acting is great. The fact that baby Gage, Nico, could do all of those things at age 2, all
Right.
the things that he did do, crazy.
All the things they intended for 4-year-olds to do, which is wild.
Yeah,
He
no,
was better
it's
than 4-year-olds, so they were like, cast a 2-year-old instead.
right. Fred Gwynn's amazing. The lead guy, I can't, the actor, oh God, I can't think of the actor. Hold on, let me look him up.
I'm about to say,
Pet
Dale
Sematary.
Midcliffe.
Dale Midcliffe, who I cannot help but keep thinking of as Elvis because I saw him as Elvis in something. Oh my gosh, he looks weird now. We have to talk about what he looks. That's crazy. He looks really weird now. Okay. So anyway, sorry, Dale. Sorry, Dale Midkiff. That, that was positively jarring for the picture that I'm looking at right now. Anyway, I saw him in an Elvis movie that was like a made-for-TV movie, and then every time I see him, I'm like, Elvis? Like I get confused. Everyone did a great job. Stephen King is masterful at what he does, right? So it's a great story. It's creepy. The practical effects, especially for the 80s, were top notch. Like I almost want to give
Mhm.
it a 9, but it's like it's not. I feel like 9 and 10 are reserved for like my most favorite movies,
Yeah.
right? And this one's really solid, right? But it's like I just can't bring it to the 9. So 8.5 is where I'm going to leave it at. I love it. It's great. I don't like anything, any kind of movie that involves like animal death really bugs me, but like they came back to life in this one, so it makes it a
Yes,
little
and no
better.
animals were harmed in the making of this movie.
No
None of
animals
the
were
cats who played
harmed.
Church were harmed in the making of this
See,
movie.
so it worked out for everyone. So I'm gonna leave it with my 8.5. I'm gonna stand firm
Yeah. And I can
there.
say too, like, yeah, this isn't necessarily my favorite 80s horror movie. Right now, Poltergeist is holding the crown of that 10 that it magically got, that I was like, oh my gosh. So Yeah, I'm kind of like basing things against that going
Right.
forward.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so
Okay. Solid. Well, I don't have anything else to add. Do you have anything else?
no, I will close us out.
Take us home.
Yes, so thank you for trudging through the mud with us on this episode of The Horror Ghouls, where we dug up the unnerving tale of Pet Sematary, from a
Mm.
pint-sized killer to a neighbor who's helpful in all the worst ways. This story served plenty of grave flesh food for thought. But
Gross.
we want to know what you think. Did Pet Sematary unearth some real chills within you? Or did it reek as badly as Church after his undead makeover? Please
Uh,
drop your verdict in the comments for us because we'd love to read them. So, if you dig our twisted storytelling, hit like, subscribe, and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The Horror Ghouls. And remember, we are trying to reach 50 subscribers. So please, 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 thank you very much for hitting that subscribe. We will haunt you forever. Now, of course, if you prefer to listen to us, we are on every major podcast platform. Just search The Horror Ghouls. And of course, hit the notification bell so you won't miss our next resurrection, of horror favorites. So until next time, stay spooky, steer clear of burial grounds that send the dead back wrong. And remember, sometimes dead is better. I can't even do the accent. Sometimes dead is better. That's better. There you go.
Love it. All right, see you guys next time.
Yes.
Bye.
Bye, guys.